Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of FinTechTainment, a podcast initiative introduced by the RMIT Vietnam Fintech Club. The purpose of our podcast is to bring you valuable insights, stories, and perspectives from intriguing industry players. In today's podcast, we're having on a fintech entrepreneur who returned from the United States after having worked in finance to contribute to Vietnam's economic growth and the growth of its startup ecosystem. He co-founded two major fintech startups, the first one being Anfin, a major player in the digital investment app space, allowing users to invest with as little as 10,000 dong. And recently, he ventured into the wealth tech space with a new initiative called One Long. Today's discussion will revolve around his career journey, his stories of building two major fintech startups, the entrepreneurial spirit, and the Vietnamese economic potential. And so with that, may I introduce Mr. Michael Do, the co-founder and CEO of One Long. It's a pleasure to have you on our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So I've introduced a little bit about you, but I'm sure the audience would love to hear from your perspective. So could you briefly introduce who you are and why you're here?
Yeah, of course. Like I said, thank you so much for having me. I love what RMIT FinTech Club is doing. I wish I had a club like that when I was in university. So just to introduce myself, I'm Michael. I am the co-founder and CEO of One Long. I've had over 7 years working in Vietnam now, and a career over 10 years. As you mentioned, I came from the US. And my mission here really is to put Vietnam on the map. I was born here and I love coming here, and when I started to come back here, I really saw like the really strong entrepreneurial spirit, and I want to be able to support that and produce really world-class companies. That is my mission, and I want to be able to continue that at my startup, but also from a small fund that I invest from as well.
So you studied finance and business economics at the University of Southern California,
That's
USC.
right. Yes.
What motivated you to take the finance and business route?
Yeah, I really love money. What can I say? But the truth is that I was doing business first. So I did business because honestly, my dad told me a lot of stories about him building a business in Vietnam during the Doi Mai policy and that time in that era. And that always really fascinated me as a child. I knew that I wanted to build a business and start a business and major in business. When I got to university, a lot of university students should do this as well, is I found a mentor. And my mentor at that time, when I was just a freshman in college, I didn't know anything, was doing investment banking. And he was an investment banker at JP Morgan in his junior year and doing an internship. And so he walked me through how to get into investment banking. And it's actually very difficult in the US, it's a very selective process. And I just started on that process, and I really fell in love with what investment bankers do. And that's kind of how I did finance, and that's how I kind of got into business.
I saw that you previously worked at Lazard, which is one of the prominent, esteemed investment banking firms in the world.
Right.
Could you share with the students how that process was like? I know I've interviewed people before. I asked them, how's your experience working in investment banking? And people would just say that, it's so, paranoid, it's so anxiety driven. But how was your experience like?
Yeah, exactly that. It's not easy to get into investment banking. It never has been, because they pay very, very high salaries. And this was in 2013. So this was before, all these software engineers came out and started making a bunch of money after university. And so to make 6 figures, it was very crucial to be in investment banking. And so when I had my mentor, he walked me through how to do that. And so the way that you did it at that time was you did a couple of unpaid internships in wealth management or in finance, or really anything that you can find your first 2 years in university. And then afterwards, what you would do is get your junior year internship. That was very, very important, because if you got a junior year internship in investment banking, then you could get a full-time offer. And if you got that full-time offer, like you were set for senior year was easy. But if you didn't, and you had to recruit, and then maybe you didn't have an offer, like that was the most competitive. I didn't have an offer. I did a UBS internship during my junior year summer. And so that fall, I was just spending a lot of time at networking events, meeting other investment bankers, networking as much as I can. And funny story is that the person who ultimately gave me an offer to Lazard was Vietnamese. And so kind of connected over doing that. And for the process, typical process, 2 to 3 interviews, and then a super day where you go up to the office, you meet everyone on the team. Very stressful process, but luckily in the late fall, I got a full-time offer, and the rest is history.
How competitive did you feel that it was?
It's super competitive. There were so many people in business and finance and accounting who really wanted to do investment banking. Like even engineers, they wanted to go and start out their career because it's such kind of a good career to be in. As a generalist, you learn so much about different businesses. And so everyone wants to be in it. It's super competitive. Everyone is going to these networking events. I'm a natural at networking events right now, but in my university days, like standing in a circle, trying to get in a question, one banker, 10 people who wanted jobs, everyone wanted to talk and get a question. But really where I found the most value was getting the business card and then scheduling a one-on-one meeting afterwards.
I see. What were some of the major challenges that you saw working at Lazard and investment banking in general?
Oh, wow. Long hours, tough working environment, very cutthroat. And sometimes, you just would have to get it done, and that would require a significant amount of focus and work and collaboration and, staying up at night and then making sure that the managing director is happy with the final product. Because ultimately what investment banking is sales. And as a junior analyst, you're focused on doing the analysis and you're focused on doing the presentation and then sitting on calls, taking notes, and then during deal execution, working with the legal team, working with the compliance, accounting, and making sure everything is ready for the deal to happen. And so it's challenging, but it's so worth, I think, the effort that you put in. I think it's one of those things. The more you put in, the more you get out.
When you decided to leave investment banking, what were some of the most significant lessons or experiences or skills that you took with you?
Absolutely. So I think what young people should realize is that your 20s is really a time for experimentation. And I kind of got that message as well. And so while I was in investment banking, I knew I could always maybe go back or do MBA and then go back. But I really wanted to explore what was happening in the world. And I was fortunate enough to be in San Francisco doing investment banking there. So being in San Francisco, everything was happening in tech all around us. This is in 2014 is when Uber started. And then when we first got to San Francisco, it was Uber, and then they started UberX, which is the modern form of ride hailing. This is like people driving in your cars, and we were kind of there for that. And so there were so many tech things happening. And I just saw like so many people kind of joining tech from investment banking. Not to say that I followed them, but the reason why I did that was because they seemed to be doing really great products. And I chose to do a mobile gaming startup, a unicorn, making quite significant money during that time.
So you were an analyst at Lazard.
Yes.
What was the most fascinating story while working at Lazard? What was the biggest deal that you worked on? What was the biggest, the most stress-ridden, most analytical deal that you worked on? Could you share that story?
Yeah. So they're actually a pretty big company now, a company called Micron. Micron Technologies. They are a semiconductor company that does memory-based microchips. And so they had three, this may get a little more technical, but they had three outstanding in-the-money convertible debt securities. And we transformed those three in-the-money convertible debt securities, flushed out in the money equity part, paid off the bondholders, and then created a new security and issued proportionately how much they would own in the new security. So we turned three securities into one, and then optimized for a different strike price and a different interest rate. And that really helped the business manage their cash flow. Right now, Micron stock in the last year is up like 60, 70%. it is kind of cool to be a part of that story because 2013, 10 years ago, they were not as big as they are today. But I'd like to think that the work that we did, helping them optimize their balance sheet and their cash flow, helped them to build the business that they have today.
So you left investment banking, and then after that, I know that you joined another company. But I want to talk about the part where you decided to leave that company to come back to Vietnam.
Yes.
I think in some time between 2018, 2017-ish.
Yeah. Okay.
So that makes you somewhat of a VQ, right? But
100%.
Okay.
That's somewhat. Yeah.
So to phrase my question, I know that a lot of VQs, they're hesitant to go back to their homeland.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. They feel the connection with their Vietnamese roots, with their blood,
Sure.
and they want to return to their original soil, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
But mostly they return for tourism purposes. They want to go there, visit their families, all of that. But you decide to go back and start a business, or you worked and then you started a business.
Yeah.
Why did it make sense for you?
Wow, that's a great question, and I hope to answer it in a way that would give other VQs the motivation to come back here as well, because I don't regret my decision at all. I did this mobile gaming startup. I realized that sometimes don't chase your passion. I really love playing games, but that doesn't translate to like a career that you should necessarily be in. And so I was kind of feeling unsatisfied, and I took a trip back to Vietnam, and my first trip since coming to the US, coming back to Vietnam when I was already 26 years old, I think. And I just kind of fell in love with the place. I don't know, I felt there was a great environment. I could see there was so much development happening. Everything was being built. Like, people were generally very excited, I think, to kind of be there. And I took a very big leap of faith and I came back. I didn't know where it would lead. Again, I didn't really know many people there. I didn't have family. But I found a very good community of people who are like-minded, the people who love tech, people who love startups and finance and investments. And I built this community very early on, and that has also helped guide me to kind of the career that I have today. I've had a lot of helping hands. And so, just with any young people, like, find a good mentor, have them kind of carry you along and introduce you where you need introductions. I will say that, sometimes, VQs get the reputation of coming back here just to party and have fun. But after you get that, like, open up your horizons, open up your mind, be kind of observant of the ecosystem. And I think you'll find something that meets your passions and your goals.
I want to talk about that ecosystem later, but first I want to know, as a VQ, you don't speak Vietnamese as naturally as most Vietnamese do.
Right.
What were some of the cultural challenges that you found, or any challenges in general? What were the challenges you face as somebody who just came back from the US?
Yeah, language is one, but I think you have to just kind of like to call a bit. You have to just go for it, right? I mean, most VQs, they talk Vietnamese in their home at the very least with their parents who maybe came here, immigrated to the US or to wherever. And so they do have that foundation for it. But if you come here, you know that you have to speak Vietnamese. My Vietnamese is not bad. I lead meetings in Vietnamese and all of that. But at the very beginning, I didn't know much, and I had to just immerse myself in that environment where you are watching movies, listening to music. On Netflix, I have Vietnamese captions, get the full experience of the Vietnamese culture. So that was one, language. I would say another one is just how much paperwork there is for everything. I haven't used my real signature much in the US, but in Vietnam, very, paper oriented. You have to, master your signature. You have to stamp. You have to notarize. There's quite a bit of things that you have to learn to do business here, and that's not as obvious now that there's things like ChatGPT, but there wasn't at that time, so you just had to Google and read. So just figuring out how to do that. Those are probably my biggest two, but everything else I have to say, Vietnam has everything. They have good food, good sushi, good Japanese, good Chinese food. I never really felt like anything was missing in terms of lifestyle here.
So when you returned, you worked for investment, but after that, you quitted your job and you did a startup called Anfin.
Yeah.
So my question is just straight up, why Anfin and why startup?
That's another great question. Everyone has a goal that they want to accomplish in life. Some people want to start a business, some people don't. Some people are good at starting businesses, some people are not. And there's only one way to find out, is just go and do it. And seeing if you can meet those goals and just being very honest with yourself. And so I was a lot on the investing side, but I could do investing anywhere. Like, you could invest in here, the US or Singapore or Hong Kong. And a lot of the fundamentals of how to do that business and investing business is pretty much the same. Like, there's a lot of commonality. But doing a startup, there's no path. There's no developed path. Everything is new. You can have some ideas, but the nuances of building it, like, I never faced a challenge as large in my life. And so the reason why I did that was to really challenge myself and to create value as an entrepreneur rather than a capital allocator, which is what investments is. I chose to do Anfin because truth be told, it was a very hot time for trading apps. COVID, zero interest rate, everyone at home. There was just like a plethora of new investment trading apps, crypto, NFTs. And then when I kind of looked around, I saw the Vietnam stock market starting to really develop, but it was very expensive to invest. I don't know if you remember, but the trading lot was from 10 stock to 100, which made blue chip companies 10 times more expensive.
It depends on the securities broker that you choose, but
Absolutely.
my previous investing experience was you need 100 shares at least.
Yes.
Yeah. So it makes it hard for some to invest. Yes.
Right. And so like maybe a blue chip company like Vietnam Milk or Masan is like 80,000, right? So if you times 100, it's 8 triệu. Like, it's quite a bit of money to invest. Instead of that, you can invest really any amount. So we want to go really solve for this pain point. And we created a system for fractional shares. And it's one that I think had been very, very profitable. I can talk about why, but it was very profitable. And so it was just like a problem that could monetize, solves a pain point, and has a big market. And we just kind of went head over heels into that.
So you said that it was a very hot, quote unquote, hot market.
Very
right?
hot, yeah.
So which meant that there were a lot of competitors in the market at the time. I know that a lot of startups like Infina, FinHey, TT Tata, a bunch of other startups that appeared around the time. You started in 2021, if I'm not mistaken?
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
June 2021.
There were a lot of startups in the digital investment app space in that time.
Yeah.
So with so many competitors, how did you guys manage to position yourself? What made you different?
Yeah, I think as an early stage company, if you're thinking about competitors, you're thinking about the wrong thing. Like, competitors matter when you're big enough to actually compete for market share. As a tiny startup, like, you're not really competing for market share with the incumbents like VN Direct or BPS. As a early stage company, all you really have to do is focus on solving one problem. And so we focused on solving for what we called like our 3 principles, which was financial literacy, financial access, and financial success. And that meant something very different for each of that. And when we went to go do fractional shares, that was what we called financial access, right? How do you get people to access this market better? And at that time, there wasn't actually that many. It was just really FinHey and Infina, and then us. We were kind of the number 3 guy, if you will. But we were fortunate to get into YC and also, be, one of the fortunate to have raised the money that we did.
Yeah. So you worked as the chief product officer. Can you share more about your role and how it contributed to you building a competitive advantage?
Yeah, wow, very, very good questions. For a tech company, you usually need either a CTO or a CPO who understands tech. Because someone has to build it, someone has to be able to come out with a product that is good enough for people to use, especially with fintech, by the way. So fintech, it's one of those fields where you have to really build good user experiences from day one. If you don't do that, you're missing out on a lot of opportunity. People don't trust apps they don't feel is trustworthy. But as a chief product officer, what you're really doing is delivering product in a way that measures something that you can also make a decision about. So what that means is like we would come out with a lot of ideas. Like we had engineers work on different MVPs at a time. Like, so we had some social products, we had fractional shares, we had savings. And then honestly, for an early stage company, seeing what sticks, right? Seeing what people use, and then focusing on the things that are working, and then focusing on the metrics that you want to improve, and then deciding that month after month with your management team, with your co-founders, and then delivering that and working with marketing so that things are kind of communicated in that right way. So you kind of sit at I think, the middle point between maybe the CEO and the founders with the kind of product and engineering team. That, sometimes like CPO is not necessarily just like really you're a product manager, or maybe like the head product manager.
Can I ask you a business related question?
Of course.
So earlier what you said was, I think you said a good point, which is when you're going for a startup, the incorrect frame of mind is to think about your competitors immediately.
Yes.
But I know that there's this philosophy, especially in tech startups, is to go fast and break things.
Yes, Facebook. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure if I'm phrasing it correctly, but
perfect. Yeah.
But you go fast and you break things. You disrupt the industry and you disrupt your competitors.
Yeah.
And you scale as fast as you can.
Yes.
But that didn't seem to be the strategy you guys were taking. You guys were just focused on solving one tiny problem, which was digital, or which was financial access.
Yes.
Did you guys think that it was a good approach, given the conventional wisdom, which is to go fast, penetrate the market, build market share, burn a lot of money, and then rack up as much market share as possible? What do you think about that from a business? Because you're also from a business finance background.
Sure. Again, market share, I think for an early stage company, pre-Series A is just too early to talk about. I think the whole go fast and break things state of mind or mentality probably doesn't apply to fintech as much, because you run into a lot of regulations. Okay. You run into regulators and them asking, can you do this? You're working with your compliance team to say, can I do this? Can I offer this? Is this working with a partner? What is the contract like? I think move fast and break things can be done in kind of a more conservative manner. Maybe move slowly and shift things. So I never had that mentality as much. I think that what is crucial for that mentality is to launch MVPs very fast. So when you're building a product, you have an idea, like what is the most minimum way that I can get this idea to market, that someone who uses it, I can figure out something from their behavior. If you can get on this cycle of 1 week, 2 week releases, like you're good to go as a startup. Big corporates or big tech companies, they have month-long sprint cycles, and even more. They're launching these products because they need to be able to satisfy as many people as possible, because they have such a big user base already. For us, as a startup, just figure out if something is working and then do that as many times as possible.
My understanding was that Anfin received around 4.8 million-ish from YCombinator.
From that round.
Okay, from that round.
Yeah.
Okay. YCombinator is quite prestigious, and our club has worked with and have also interviewed quite a lot of YCombinator guys.
Yeah.
But I wanted to hear from you. How was the experience with YCombinator like? Because it's not just you go in, you pitch, and then they give you money, but it's also an incubator. It trains you, gives you network access. Like, how was the experience like? I want to hear that.
Yeah, YCombinator is the gold standard in accelerator programs. They produce companies like Coinbase and Airbnb, Gusto, like Reddit, quite a few good companies, and they're very, very, very rich. So it was such a great program because they never really took that many companies from Vietnam, right? So even before our batch, they took maybe 3 companies from Vietnam. Our batch, we had 6, 7 companies from Vietnam. And so they took quite a few. And so they were very, very bullish on Vietnam. And we were fortunate to be a part of that batch. As a program itself, it is, I think, a 10-week program where they teach you how to be a founder. They have a very, very great resource called Bookface. Only the alumni of YCombinator get access to this, but it has knowledge bases, it has investor databases, it has basically all the contact information of every single YC founder ever.
What was the best thing you learned in that 10-week period, that 10-week program?
Best thing that I learned, I think just how to think about like monetization and how to think about the user funnel, right? So there's top of the funnel and there's like bottom of the funnel, and like the approach to like converting users at each is very, very different. And then how to actually apply technology to the funnel, like a referral program. There's some really, really great videos online. I would really highly recommend checking out the YC YouTube channel, such a good startup channel. And I will say that, founders will, especially now, may not admit this as much, is the funding. Like a lot of people believe in YC, and funding is very, very not easy, but it is available to YC founders who prove themselves.
But I'm wondering, why was the sales funnel or the marketing funnel? So I'm sure it's something along the lines of the AIDA model: awareness, interest, desire, attention, action, some things like that. Why did you find that personally? Why did you find that to be most valuable?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more product. I really like finance. I really like tech, and I want to find intersection of that. So I have a lot of ideas, but when you apply ideas and you move them along the funnel, maybe they don't convert, and then it's not a good idea. Because if people don't use your idea or people don't use your product, then it really probably wasn't a great idea in the first place. And so just to think about that funnel, I didn't have too much experience with, but then it really made sense to apply this kind of that framework. I have another framework that I use called R. It's like acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, and referral. So this is kind of the framework that I use for our product, and I kind of learned that along the way at YC. But if you can take that framework and apply it to a big or a small product, then you know what's successful and what's not.
Building Anfin must have been quite a challenge, especially for a first-time entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What was the biggest challenge that you faced?
Yeah, changing market cycles. So
can you explain more about that?
Yeah, of course. So during that time at the beginning, and this was already changing by the time we got into YC, but when Anfin started, this was a zero interest rate environment. So this was bottom of the bottom of the tank kind of interest rates. You could get a mortgage for like 1%, 2%, and then buy really big homes, right? And so interest rates are very low. And then of course, the Federal Reserve started to see that inflation was picking up. Money supply was very high. They were giving away money for free, essentially because of COVID, because of all of it had on impact and small businesses. So there was a lot of cash going around. And so as interest rates kind of went up, then that cash supply started to shrink, making it difficult for retail investors or just investors in general to invest more, but also to access leverage and also to trade different products. So we saw definitely a contraction of the market. For example, when we were working at Anfin, the peak transaction value for Vietnam stock market was about $2 billion to $2.5 billion US per day. Till now, it has not really pass, a billion. Right now it averages about 500 million US. So this is like a 70-80% contraction of the market that we make money off of. And so we saw that, and we tried continuing to adapt and pivoting our model and figuring out how to make money in an environment that was very tough to make money in.
So how do you guys position yourself when it was an easy money environment and when it was a hard money environment? How did you guys position yourself?
Yeah, I want to say we did things perfectly, but I think that there was a lot of experimentation that happened. I think that only that you can do is continue to experiment and innovate. I would say that if I could do it again, of course, just thinking back, like moving to asset classes that have more international access in a bigger market. Of course, you have to think about what your key value proposition or what you are unique with and unique product. But something like trading, like you have to be in fields where there are derivatives, alternative assets that have a high risk, high yield kind of profile. And that crypto has all of that. And so Vietnam is also very big with crypto. Actually, I remember when we were talking to a lot of investors, they kept on asking us, are you doing crypto? When are you doing crypto? Like Vietnam is big on crypto. Did you know that? I'm like, yeah, we know that. So I would say that that's also difficult because of the regulation, but there are solutions to do that. But we were very, focused on just operating in Vietnam domestic assets.
So maybe what you had hoped you could have done differently. Let me just try to make sure I understand what you mentioned. Was what you hoped you had done differently was you focus on more internationalized markets.
Yes.
Providing more access to international assets that's not just Vietnamese, because during hard times that Vietnamese cannot afford, you can always shift to the international customer, something like that.
In a part, yes. I would say that it's okay to still focus on Vietnam as a core market, but if you build a platform that is for everyone, then you have the chance to get customers outside, and that can not just mean about purchasing power or like trading volume, but just a bigger market in general. For example, like companies like Remy Tunnel, which is a popular Vietnam crypto onboarding exchange. A lot of the markets in South Africa. So it's about how you build product and then launch it internationally. I think for us at Anfin, we had definitely the capital to try things like that.
I see. Why did you decide to ultimately leave Anfin?
Yeah, I think that your passion lies elsewhere, right? So we did a lot of this active trading, active investing thing. But there's just so few products to actively trade besides stocks here. And then, like I said, a lot of the brokerages here make their money from leverage, and there's some options, some covered warrants. But there's not the big, derivatives like call options, put options, futures, forwards, swaps, like all of these. And that's just not in America. If you look at markets like India, they have quite a few of these alternative investment asset classes, shorting stock. And so you really need that to make money off active investing, because those are high margin products. Stocks is just how you kind of get experience and how retail investors get experience. But these high margin derivatives is how you make money as a brokerage. So I just felt that, I wanted to help people a little bit more, help retail investors a little bit more. And I just identified, different pain points that I think went in a different direction than Anfin.
So you realize that the kind of the premise of stock investing is not enough. You want to branch out to more derivatives, more complex financial products, and so that's how you shifted into the wealth management business, kind of?
No, my point was that for companies like Anfin and active trading companies like Robinhood to be successful, they need derivatives and options and different classes of investment that has a higher potential to gain money. That's active trading for you. In the passive investment space, it's very different. Passive investments is what One Long does more. And that's more of like automated investing, set it and forget it, keep your money in there for years. I mean, this is for your retirement, this is for a home, this is for, a different purchase like, a car or something like clothing. So these are for, I guess, actual planning, right? And so the types of services that accompany wealth management and passive investments is very different than active investing.
I just want to ask one more question about Anfin before I move on to One Long, which is why didn't you talk with your board, talk with your team to integrate the features of One Long, like wealth management and passive investing, onto Anfin? But why did you decide to move on from that?
I think that companies usually just need one direction. Multiple direction can really dilute the value of the business by kind of doing too much. And so you can always do a lot and not be successful at anything. You want to go deep and be successful with one thing. I think that's so crucial for startups. So I decided to go in a different direction. I think there was just a kind of difference in opinion.
Can you share a little bit about, for those who don't know what One Long is, can you share about what it is and how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, One Long is a wealth management app that focuses specifically on savings and high yield savings. What we identified as our pain point that we wanted to solve was savings is a very big market. People in general put their money in a bank in term deposits, overnight interest, corporate bonds, bond funds, but they have pretty stiff policies in terms of high lockup period, high penalty when you need your money back, and then pretty low interest rate, especially on the overnight interest. So we just said these are all things that we can solve with the asset classes available in Vietnam. And it's just really about how do you structure these products to meet a business use case versus just, I think, maybe some banks, they just want to give you a menu list of different terms, 1 month, 2 month, 3 months, 6 months, and say, which ones do you want? We try to go to the core use case of saving money.
So what were the similarities that you found between operating an investment platform versus a wealth management, wealth tech platform?
Yeah, it's a different model, right? So with active trading or brokerage, you make money off of transaction value. So the more people trade, buying and selling, buying and selling, buying and selling, the more money you make. You take a % fee on that. Wealth management is an AUM model, right? So it's a model that you put money into a fund and they take a management fee on top of your AUM. So the behavior is different. You don't want people to trade in wealth management. You want people to kind of set it and forget it. And that, you have to help them as a fund manager outperform what they would get if they were doing it themselves. So if I went to a bank and put my money in term deposit for 12 months, I may get 4 or 5%. In One Long, you get 9%. So by that, we meet on the criteria of financial success. Someone is making more money, it's more successful. The same thesis applies when we go in the near future into equity products. If someone goes to the market and they go and trade themselves and they, more often than not, the data shows lose money, then we, as a fund, protect them from that. We get them, not as high as they may get by trading derivatives on a couple of occasions, but a good 10 to 20%, like that is pretty substantial. And so if we're able to meet that goal, we meet the goal of any wealth manager is financial success and making sure that people are able to grow their investments over time.
Can you talk about all the different asset classes that you guys invest in, or are you comfortable sharing that?
Of course. We are doing savings, and we use only Vietnam assets or Vietnam fixed income assets, and the kind of 3 or 4. And by the way, if you are an investor in a user of One Long, just use the app, and within the app, we send you a monthly update about what your holdings are. And so what we hold is corporate bonds of good cash flow companies. We have Masan and Becamex and good cash flow businesses that won't have any problem paying off of their coupons or their interest. We also use CDs from FE Credit and F88, these businesses that do personal lending, personal finance. Your lending is quite diversified across thousands of borrowers. So we're very diversified there. And then we also use bank savings ourselves, right? We also work with banks and brokerages that have these saving products as well. And so with that interest, we're able to give you a better rate because we give you a blended rate of return versus if you just invested yourself, you would not get that flexibility, but you may get the rate, or you may get the rate but not the flexibility, and so vice versa. So we kind of meet the best of both worlds by doing a blended fund or blended product.
Speaking of that, what are the challenges that you guys find when you have to meet commitments in terms of returns?
I don't know, it's challenging. I mean, what you have to manage is kind of the 3 risk of fixed income is like credit ratio, liquidity ratio, business ratio, or it's just like these are all metrics that we track. Like, is the company able to pay back their interest? Do they have a lot of outstanding debt? Like, is the business EBITDA growing? Like, these are all things that you got to learn in finance and banking. And so we do our analysis on these businesses. And so we have not had any problem meeting the interest rate. We also run our own financial models. And so we optimize our revenue by sharing with interest with users in a way that we are still very profitable. And I think that's the algorithm that we have. I think that's what gives our business value, is the back-end engineering that we have around a kind of allocation model.
What were some of the biggest lessons that you learned when you did both startups that you did not learn from your corporate job, from investment banking?
Yeah. So investment banking is all about corporate finance, and usually you work with established businesses that are very big, and they need to do something like sell themselves, they need to buy a company, they need to raise capital. So these things are done very differently at a big corporate. There is quite a bit of process and structure and who's reporting to who. So you have a very structured way to do that. And how to run corporate finance, to kind of run finance or to run a business. Like, there's just no way that there's an exact way to do anything, right? Especially if you want to innovate, it's always about building the process yourself and figuring out like the kind of the best practices of running the business in the most efficient way. Because ultimately, as a founder, you're a lot of things, but I think 2 most important things as a founder for me is you have to be a system builder. You can't do everything yourself, especially as you raise more and grow more. You have to build systems. This is how we run meetings. This is how we do OKRs. This is the software we use. This is how we run kind of sprint planning or whatever to kind of get the product out. And then the second thing is prioritization, because every single person, including yourself and your co-founders, will have ideas. You have to say, this one we're doing, this one we're not. Let's go do it.
So I want to talk about fintech in general.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that you are very opinionated on this space.
Right.
What do you think about the use of AI in fintechs these days? Maybe I'll phrase it, I'll add another layer to it, which is that AI is kind of the current trend.
Yeah.
A lot of companies, startups are jumping on this bandwagon.
Yeah.
Whether it's actually, regardless of if it's actually necessary or not.
Yeah.
Some of them just build a different version of ChatGPT, and their startup's valuation skyrockets, right, without actually creating much in the way of value.
Sure.
So what do you think about the trend of AI being used in fintech or startups in general?
Yeah, I think it's very early. I think that the way that you build AI products now will be very different than the way that you build it in the future. And the space itself is, rapidly evolving as well. So, at the very beginning, it was all about like writing content and creating like all these different like, articles and then helping you do that. A lot of, children and then students just have to help them, do their work and learn. And then it became more about like search and like, like contextualizing certain keywords with like different links. And then now it's very much about sales agents and agent model, where each agent can do something very specific, and you train and you use RAG to kind of pull out specific information for that agent to be able to produce content, to contextualize, to inference, and then apply like a lot of different technology to that. I think what I'm seeing is that finance is something that AI is being used for a lot less. I mean, the spaces where it is most prevalent right now is customer service and coding. And like I've also started to learn how to code from AI. It's just so good at reducing a task that was previously very complicated to much kind of shorter learning window. But I do use it for research, for finance, for just pulling out information from like a 10K or 10Q. I think that it's quite a while to go to really apply AI to finance as well as an analyst or an investment banker or an agent or a search agent would do it.
What do you think about AI's applications in predicting and forecasting stock prices and stock movements?
I think that it depends on the market. So for places like Vietnam and for certain crypto, like it is hard to predict because there is so much insider trading. There's so many whales that are able to eat up the order book and then affect price. I think for AI to be good, or predictive analytics to be good at looking at where a stock price will go, you have to look for markets that have high liquidity and people trading back and forth, because AI and predictive analytics will look at aggregate behavior versus individual behavior. Individual behavior is impossible to predict. Efficient market with tens of thousands of investors, not so much. I think there's more correlation there.
I've been reading a very interesting book called The Black Swan. I'm not sure if you've read it.
Sure, like option pricing model.
Yes. So I mean, the essential concept of the Black Swan is that essentially, just because something has been happening for forever doesn't mean that an outlier can jump in and then just change everything, just change the entire landscape. And I think it kind of applies to what you're saying, which is, it can predict over the course of a certain time frame, a certain kind of behavior, but an individual with a lot of capital can come in and manipulate and drive up or down the prices.
Right, and to that point, there's a ton of black swan events in the world that affect price and affect markets. Like, who could have predicted COVID, right? You may had an idea that something was happening, but to know that it'd be a global pandemic, no way. That was a black swan event for sure. And a lot of people made a lot of money from that. And so hard to predict, but the people who react fast and have a clear thesis on the way that things will play out will be able to profit a lot. So good to pay attention to black swan events. I think there could be a couple more coming up in the world, to be honest. I think that there's a lot of interesting things happening in current events that may produce black swan events.
You mentioned a very interesting point, which is people who react fast will kind of take the opportunities, right?
Yes.
As a former investment banker yourself, do you think that AI will replace investment bankers? And if so, what should investment bankers do?
No, I don't think so at all, actually. I think that what AI is very good at will be, or the biggest use case for what I think is building product. Like I've been building websites. I've built scripts to like scrape data. Like I don't have a technical background, but with the use of AI and some basic understanding of VS Code, I'm able to build things. And so any normal person without a computer science background can go and build basic things. I think what ultimately will be the kind of key value from this is someone in sales and marketing. Those will be the skill sets of the future. Like someone who is good at marketing something and networking and doing sales, because everyone has a product. It's about those who can sell. And investment bankers are that. So investment banking, different from investment analysts. Investment bankers are more like salespeople, right? They're salespeople for their investment bank.
Now, I want to cycle back to your thoughts on Vietnam and on your original, on the statements you said before that you believe that Vietnam has a lot of potential. That's why you returned. And, beyond just loving the culture, the food, the, local restaurants, you also believe in Vietnam as a concept, as a country, and as, as a potential economic dragon.
Of course.
You often share a lot on, I know that you own a post or a personal blog called Vinovators, where you share a lot of your thoughts on Vietnam.
Yeah.
So from your point of view, what potential do you see in Vietnam?
Wow, so many. The fundamentals of the economy are so strong because Vietnam is following exactly in the path of the Asian tiger economies, including China, is that Vietnam is not a resource-rich country. It's not like a bunch of oil and gas. Usually those countries, they don't always have the best outcomes, right? Because, it becomes nationalized and then, the people who work for the government, they benefit a lot from resource-rich countries. Vietnam, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, none of that, no oil, no gas can be found on our land. Yet, all of these economies are extremely wealthy, and that's because they did some very basic things. Is they kind of work for other countries, quote unquote work. They did low cost manufacturing, clothing, shoes, textiles, and then they started to use that to build relationships with foreign companies who then invested in FDI, into high tech manufacturing, and then that brought along all of this demand for better education into STEM. Once a country gets very educated into STEM, no one can take that away. You have a bunch of engineers, you have a bunch of doctors, you have a bunch of scientists and who do R&D, because the final step after we get done working for the big corporates like Apple and Foxconn and Samsung is we need to build our own homegrown tech companies. This is the only way that Vietnam will become an Asian tiger economy. And so this is where the potential is. I hope that anyone who watches this, either you do business or you do STEM, right? That it's so crucial to have good engineers who work for a Vin Group or an FPT, and produce world-class AI technology, world-class semiconductors, world-class cars, consumer electronics, and be under our brand, our intellectual property, not under the kind of work arrangement of a corporate that has outsourced here. So the potential is I think Vietnam is to be nothing short of South Korea or a Japan, but we are in phase 2. We're starting to do a lot of high-tech manufacturing. The last phase happening right now with university students who are wanting to do a startup, who has a big idea, has a big vision, and they need the resources, the capital, the know-how to go and do that. Because ultimately, whatever those group of people will do will be the reason why Vietnam is rich or becomes a middle-income economy.
What potential do you see in the Vietnamese people?
Yeah, pretty smart. Yeah, I've hired quite a few, so I'm learning a lot from people who teach me about the language, about the culture, but also about marketing, sales, all of that. And then nuances of doing business here, like sleeping in the afternoons, all of that. That's new to me. But it's so interesting because Vietnam graduates, I think the metric that I saw was like 60, 70,000 new engineers every year. That's more than, relative speaking, all of the other Southeast Asian countries. People here really want great future, and they study abroad and then they also come back. I think that there's the same reason why I came back. There's so much to offer here, but it definitely does not have a brain drain. There are people who study abroad. I think the ones that I've seen, anecdotally speaking, they come back. Somewhere like India, they don't come back.
I think the keyword that you mentioned there was quite important, brain drain.
Yeah.
It's a topic that's mentioned a lot in Vietnamese conversations. What do you think about brain drain, and what do you think can be done to, maybe attract the Vietnamese who, are in foreign countries, attract people like yourself, like talents like yourself to come back to the country and can contribute?
I think things like this podcast is how you get people to come back. Like, it's so hard, let's say, growing up in Vietnam to see an American salary, because here people make moi chiu, hai mi chiu, ba mi chiu a tháng, and then over there you make like 200, 300 chiu một tháng, like easy. Like, that's an engineer's first year out of college, right? And so you're like, how, when I am a Vietnamese person who grew up in Vietnam and I go over there to study university, and the first year out of school, they're giving me a salary, like, this can change my life, right? So it's so hard to say no to the money. That's what the US has going, that's what EU has going for it. But to really get people to come back, you have to show them that there is a source of national pride that has to happen. That the US is a great economy, and I love America, but it also has a lot of problems too, and it deals a lot with, racism and all of that, and it's a lot of social problems, and Asians are a part of that. That there's just so much bigger of an upside here if you want to come back here and start a business. If you want to come back here and work salary, maybe just stay over there. But I think coming back here and starting a business, I think there's no way that you could do that in the US. You maybe start small businesses, but the data is clear. Like, a lot of the VC funding does not go to minorities. So, I think here you're part of the majority. You're part of a movement that could be very big. Good fundamental economy. It just needs people who are willing to innovate and try hard things, and hopefully that motivates people rather than scaring them.
Besides money, okay, what do you think are the limitations that Vietnam can overcome when attracting foreign direct investment?
I mean, it's. I will speak. There's different types of foreign direct investment, but I will say, let's say for startups and for venture capital, like, we have to provide an ability to exit, right? There's a kind of, I don't know if it's negative or positive, but a lot of Vietnamese corporates would rather build it themselves than to buy a startup, which cuts out M&A, right? M&A is one exit for startups. Another one is to go public, but even the Vietnam Stock Exchange has quite a bit of regulation. When it goes public, you have to be profitable. If not, you're on the kind of over-the-counter exchange. There's no liquidity there. Then you have to go to Singapore, Hong Kong, or Japan. Like, it's just, then if you're an investor, how am I gonna get my money back? Like, if I can't answer that easily, and there's no precedence or history of companies exiting, then I'm not going to invest in startups here. Like, I may take some chance and some risk because I know the fund manager and I trust them, but at a large scale, I'm not going to be able to raise like $100 million fund or like multi-$100 million just for Vietnam only. So yeah, it's a tough venture market so far. but I would say that we were a bit behind in this tech cycle. I think now with this new cycle, we have opportunity to be ahead.
I think that's a very interesting perspective. When I ask this question to many people, they often say, oh, they need to improve the market needs to be more vibrant, there needs to be a lot more incubators, accelerators. But for you say that the infrastructure for exiting a startup needs to be better. It needs to be more improved so that the VCs, the angel investors, they know with more certainty that even if it's a high-risk bet in the Vietnamese startup, there's going to be something on the other end.
Yes, investors really care about getting their money back, so as any investment would. So the question was around FDI, so I assume that that's how we could convince them. If there were more accelerators here, if there was more tech talent here, I don't think that would necessarily convince investors specifically. That may convince founders to go build businesses here, but it won't convince investors to invest more here. It needs to be kind of a balance between skill set, opportunity, and investment and exiting.
My last question on Vietnam is, what do you think are the trends that Vietnam can capitalize on?
So we discussed this a bit. I think continuing to go into STEM fields, science, technology. I think there's so much to do in the green space, so much to do in space. I mean, FinTech, AI. But AI is a field that I feel more careful on, more doubtful on. I think blockchain is something that could be very big, especially with the new administration in the US. Like, they seem to be very bullish on crypto and using coins as a way to replace a lot of legacy systems like Swift. So opportunities there in the fintech space, which go hand in hand, by the way, with blockchain, cryptocurrency, go hand in hand with fintech. And so focusing on emerging technologies, doing STEM, and then, I don't know, this may be controversial, but I think for a country that is export driven, that depends on FDI, that English is important. I think, talking to investors, I mean, they may have a representative here in Vietnam, but their partners in Singapore or Hong Kong or the US. So if you're not able to present yourself and ultimately connect enough with the partner to get them to invest in your company, then you don't really have anything, right? You don't have the final check. And that's all that really matters, is to get there, right? So I think to do the hard thing and learn enough to present yourself in a way where you can connect with people. I see places like Indonesia and Malaysia, fluency is pretty high. Maybe in the Philippines, like they used to be American colony, so also very decent. I think Vietnam can do more of that. And then when they're successful, don't have to, like Taiwan, Japan, they don't speak any English there at all. So it's just a temporary sacrifice, I think.
I think the last point you mentioned there is super important. It sounds very cliche, but I think it's super important.
Yeah.
I listened to a TED Talk sometime last weekend, and it was from the CEO of the co-founder. Actually, I'm not sure co-founder or CEO, but the co-founder of Duolingo.
Awesome.
Great app. And he shared that there was one point I found very interesting. He shared that when you learn a new STEM skill, or a new physics skills or new mathematics skills, it takes a lot for you to be able to incorporate and integrate that to build something valuable for yourself. He described it as something like when you learn, let's say, physics, you then have to learn mechanical engineering for you to have, like, you have to learn physics first, and then you have to take a step further to learn mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, for you to become a successful mechanic or computer scientist or something like that. But when you learn a new language skill, like let's say for example English, the immediacy and the immediate conversion to something scalable is visible. It's almost it's there. It's immediate. Immediately convertible and immediately scalable.
Right.
So I think it sounds very cliche, learn better English, learn to speak better, but ultimately we're all communicating and,
I feel like English is not even, it wasn't created by Americans. It's from England, right? It's from the United Kingdom. So it's just the language that people generally speak if they're doing international business. And having someone who is able to communicate in English on your team helps you do quite a few things, whether that's like, talking to like a Singapore lawyer or like, meeting with like an American customer. Like they want to be able to communicate because they want to be able to do business and they want to hear you out. And if they can't do that, then it makes it harder to make a decision, right? And I think it's a skill that others like other countries have really picked up on. And so to open up this world, like I think having a common language, of course, learn more than one language, and then a common currency, whether that's like Bitcoin or whatever. It's money and language culture is how you kind of get people across the world. Last point also is that I also like that a lot of social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok, like they have this feature for captions. So I can watch content and materials from people from other countries and look at the captions like in my own native language. I think it's so crucial to connect the world so that we're always at peace.
Now, I want to shift the attention to your thoughts and advice for the student community. Most of our viewers are in university, from RMIT or other universities. Some are from the industry. But I think we can all relate to is learning and education. I know that you share on your social media that you're learning how to code, even though you're from a business and finance background. And maybe just beyond coding, I want to talk about learning. What's your process for learning new information? How do you retain information and apply it?
So have this innate curiosity. So curiosity is, the skill set of like just looking at something and be like, why is it that way? Like, why is this table brown? Like, how do they make paint that's brown? How do they make paint, or how do they, create the can that paint is distributed to where you buy it from? Like, look at something and break it down step by step on a first principle basis. And then once you break down things enough times, then you can figure out what interests you the most and then figure out about that topic. So that's my process. It's just like I just look out in the world and I see things and I'm just asking, why is it that way? Because if you cannot answer it well, and then that problem is, that thing that you're looking at is potentially a problem, then you may have identified a pain point, which then could be a business. So just having this curiosity is something that I think is very important for people of any age, really.
And I guess my last question is, what advice would you give to students who want to optimize their career? Now, I break down career into two types. One is they want to go into the corporate world, right? But then the other is that they want to join a startup or create their own startup.
Right.
Having been in both worlds, what's your advice to people or students who want to optimize their career?
I think there are two parts of any career. It's like you have to learn or you have to earn, right? So at a startup, you'll be able to learn quite a bit, because if you're at the right startup, you would optimally be given the opportunity to do many things, talk to many people, talk to engineering, talk to product, talk to sales, marketing, operations, legal, talk to the co-founders about their vision. And so if you're able to do all of that, you're learning quite a bit. And a lot of building a successful career is knowing what you're good at, and be honest with yourself, because a lot of people aren't good at a lot of things. Some people are introverted, some people are extroverted. Like, some people can talk, some people can think, some people can write, some people can code. Every person is different. The faster you are about being honest about yourself, about what you're good at, the better you'll make a career choice. And so then once you figure out what that is, specialize in it, and then you go to a corporate and then do that thing at a senior role and move up the ladder because you have identified that's something you're good at, something that you can do for a long time, you're passionate about. And for a lot of businesses, there aren't that many fields. And it's like you have a product, you have to market it, you have to sell it, you have to do accounting, you have to do the sales, you have to do the compliance. So it's a lot of the same kind of concept. And so identify with your skill set which one of these departments or business roles that you could do the best. And then if you have the opportunity to go to a corporate, like a big corporate, and then work in that field. If you're young, maybe doing a startup is not bad. But working at a startup is good for learning. Building a startup as a founder, most cases, to be successful, you need to actually be specialized in a couple of things as well. You have to have the skill set or the passion or the experience to do that. So I'd say it's a pretty hard decision to make. But there is I think, framework of thinking about where is the best.
Actually, I have another last question, which is
good.
touching on what you mentioned, I don't know, way back in the middle of this podcast, which was you mentioned something along the lines of you like gaming, maybe it's your passion, but you didn't want to make a career out of that because sometimes choosing your passion is not necessarily the right way to approach it, but instead to build something, to think about a field, an industry where you can build a stable and reliable career with. Now, a contrasting thought is that you should follow your passion. And actually, last week or 2 weeks ago, we interviewed another guest who followed their passion. His name was Robert.
Yes.
He's also in the startup, also a Y-Combinator guy. I asked him...
Same batch as me.
Yeah. Oh, really?
At Y-Combinator,
So he shared with me that I asked him point blank, like, why did you start Reforge Lab? So a little bit of context: he has an AI-based video game ad creation platform.
Yes.
That's a brief way to put it. I asked him why did he start that? Like, why the video game market of all markets? He said because I like League of Legends and I want to do something with gaming.
That's the reason to start, but that's not that necessarily the business, the opportunity.
But how do you approach that?
So I think good ideas and good decisions about what to do is a intersection of passion and opportunity. So of course you have to love what you do. You can do it for 10 years. There's no really successful startups that have, very few that have operated less than 5 years. 5 to 10 years is like the sweet spot. Most businesses realize their full potential and grow the fastest after year 10. So you have to be able to do this every day. If you cannot do this every day and you find it unbearable, the people that you work with unbearable, the people in the industry unbearable, then you're going to have a very hard time staying there and not burning out and losing passion. So that is the passion side of it, or the interest side of it. The other side is opportunity. And opportunity is also kind of a measure of changes in the market, new emerging technologies, policy shifts. And so to capitalize on a startup, but to grow fast, you have to be able to choose the exact time to do that exact solution for that exact market. And that's the opportunity side. So if you can match stuff that you're interested in with stuff that is a good time to do now, then you have an idea that you could go and execute and, grow fast and, be well known for that, because there is some spaces a first mover advantage in startups. If someone did it already, someone raised $10 million for it, it's then going to be harder to get funding for it, because then you just be like, hey, it's Reforge Labs again, or it's One Long again, right?
Mr. Makoto, thank you so much for coming on to our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
That is the end of our podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.